A sound test is a feature in video games that allows you to play music or sound, whether it be accessed by a cheat in the game's options menu or diegetically in the game itself. It used to be a common feature in video games, but for very obvious reasons, it's something that you rarely see anymore. So I thought, why not do a retrospective on some video game sound tests? But I realized there aren't that many interesting ones to talk about. Pretty much all of them fall into one of those three styles that I mentioned earlier, and there's really not much interesting to say about them, even regarding diegetic sound tests. But there's a few interesting ones I just wanted to point out because they do something to stand out. However, before we get into those, all of this talk of sound tests has me wondering, what was the first game with a dedicated sound test feature? It is very difficult to actually find an answer to this question online, and I'd basically just need to wade through lists of games, and that would take an insane amount of time. Also, what even counts as a sound test could be up for debate. A few arcade games had some accessible via dip switches, but I ended up asking you guys what you thought in a community post, and the best answer I got, which could still be wrong, was the Famicom version of Galaxian, released in September of 1984. I've talked about it before, but the Famicom version of Galaxian contained a secret music player. Famicom Galaxian started out life as a hobbyist project by Namco programmer Haruhisa Udagawa, and as such, it wasn't initially considered for a commercial release. So Udagawa hid some stuff in the game, likely not thinking anyone would discover it. You can access this music player either by straight up hacking the game, by resetting the game 44 times holding A and B on controller 2, then resetting again, or by resetting the game 10 times then yelling into the microphone on the second controller. This music player didn't play any music contained in the game though, I mean it's Galaxian. Instead, it contained arrangements of music by Michel Laurent and music from the film Noshka and the Valley of the Wind, along with a few other tracks that still haven't been identified since the last time I discussed this. It's likely that this was the first ever sound test, and the first hidden one as well. That being said, I'm still not sure what the first sound test that was easily accessible from an options menu was, or what the first diegetic sound test was, but I believe that one console really made sound tests a staple of its games like no other. That console, of course, being the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis. In fact, it's highly likely you're even aware of the concept of a sound test in the first place because you knew of ones from Mega Drive games. The game that I believe has the first sound test to be readily accessible from a menu, even though I could be very wrong here still, was the Mega Drive launch title and all-time disaster Super Thunderblade. I thought I'd never have to talk about this stupid game again, but I can't avoid it. You can find the sound test easily in the options menu. You know, as bad as the game is though, the music is pretty good. It's likely that this was included for testing purposes, and maybe they made it readily available to the players so consumers could also literally test if their brand new console's audio output was working. So maybe this game actually did some good. But the first game with a diegetic sound test, I believe, was another early Mega Drive game, that being Phantasy Star II. In the town of Opata, you can visit the piano teacher Ustvestia who can teach you the music technique, but you can also listen to the game's great soundtrack there. Infamously, in the Japanese version, the piano teacher is implied to be gay as he gives discounts to male party members after commenting that they look cute. While in the English version, he's simply implied to be a misogynist and instead remarks that the male character looks smart. This is a cool feature, but it's kind of pointless as a sound test, which is pretty much the case for all of these diegetic sound tests. But it's likely that when you think of sound tests in Mega Drive games, you think of the Sonic the Hedgehog games. The main cartridge entries have pretty standard sound test features, but the more interesting Sonic sound tests are found in the two Sonic games for the Mega Drive's add-ons. Sonic CD for the Mega CD and Chaotix for the 32X. Sonic CD has the DA Garden, which I'm guessing stands for Disc Audio Garden, as it allows you to listen to some of the music tracks on the game's disc, and only the ones that are on the disc. This is completely pointless though, as since it's a CD, it works in a CD player, and you can play all these tracks from the Mega CD's BIOS menu. But the developers still went through the effort to include this for fun, instead of putting effort into making the game more enjoyable for people who aren't physicists and want to play it like a regular Sonic game. The DA Garden is unlocked in the original version at least by getting a total time attack record of under 37 minutes. After that, you can access it from the menu. It gives you a view of the game's setting, Little Planet, and you can control the scaling and rotation of it as well. It's sort of a technical showcase for the Mega CD's capabilities. At the same time, like I said, you can listen to the CD tracks from the game, and depending on which one you play, you'll get to see different good and bad future versions of Little Planet. And it has a day and night cycle. It also features cameos from multiple characters, including Tails and aliens. I really like the distinct art style the DA Garden has. I like this kind of art style with thick outlines. This honestly makes for an awesome sort of screensaver, but like I said, it's sort of unnecessary as a sound test. In fact, there's another sound test in the game that not only lets you play the disc tracks, but also all of the other sounds in the game as well that you can access by using a cheat code on the title screen. It acts as its own cheat menu, as inputting certain combinations in the sound test will grant you access to stuff like the secret 8th special stage and the goofy developer drawings. A version of the DA Garden also reappeared in Sonic Mania in 2017, which was pretty cool, especially since it wasn't needed, but it's not as detailed as the original. But the other Sonic game known for having a notable sound test, and I always see it come up when people get into discussions about what the best sound test features in video games are, would be the one included in Chaotix for the 32X add-on. This one's easily accessible from the options menu, and it allows you to see exactly what notes every sound channel is playing as you play the songs. There's also an Easter egg in it, as if you set the color values to this in the color test, a certain character will appear in the sound test menu. And who is that character?
Why, it's Amy Rose, of course!
Saying cool, sweet, and catchy. Another cool feature is that you can change the tempo of the music using the D-pad by holding Y on a 6-button controller, or on what you assigned as Y in your emulator, because let's be honest here. Not much more to say about it, but the developers of these two games went well above and beyond other developers at the time when it comes to the implementation of their sound tests. Most developers would just have them be part of a basic menu, which is how they were implemented in the regular Mega Drive Sonic games, but the presentation in these games is something special. And yeah, most sound tests really aren't that interesting, which I think is why out of all of the things that have become technologically outdated in terms of video games, they're probably the least missed. They usually fall into one of those 3 categories I've mentioned, and that's it. I really have mentioned pretty much all of the interesting ones. So yeah, overall, I kind of understand why sound tests are unpopular. Most of them besides the diegetic ones are pretty bland, and even then, most of the diegetic implementation of sound tests aren't really that interesting to discuss. The most interesting most of the regular ones get is containing an unused song or sound effect or something, or some neat accompanying visuals. They've gone the way of physical instruction manuals as things that could be charming when they existed, but are no longer needed in the current day, even if they do show up in new releases from time to time. But the few ones that did something interesting definitely stand out as something special and helped give the game's character. Let me know of any of your favorite sound tests or something that you feel I've missed. Obviously, with how poorly documented this topic is, I'm bound to have gotten a lot of information wrong in this video. Special thanks to my patrons for supporting the show, and thank you all for watching.